I think we live inherently in a meaningless world, inherently, and I think humans individually, it's humans' duty to create their meaning.
Don't die in disbelief, because on the Day of Judgment we're told that two types of people will have a very hard time. In fact, hellfire. Just as you believed and believe in Australia and I believe in Australia, I've got more faith in the Hadith and the Quran than I have of any other notion. But it's because of evidence.
There's another explanation, which is, no, everything is cause and effect. Even my thoughts are a product of whatever went before. And I have the illusion that I'm controlling my thoughts, but actually no, I'm just a glorified robot that thinks it thinks, but actually I have no way of controlling this.
Okay.
So whatever conclusions I come up with are predetermined.
Okay.
Whatever thoughts I'm thinking, I cannot have thought another thought.
It had to have been that way.
Had to have been that way. So
But
my question is, how are you explaining?
Yeah, no, I would say that's too deterministic. So that's too. I'd say there's too much. There's too much determinism there in the sense that, you know, I think as humans we definitely do have free will, and we definitely do. Although things like I said broadly, sometimes we don't have control. Like for example, like let's say you have 5 thoughts. Like there are like 5 different pathways to take. The existence of these 5 different pathways indicates that there is free will. But the fact that there are pathways indicates that free will is hampered in a way. So it's, in the broad sense, I would say, I would disagree. But I would agree that there is a degree of determinism. But in the more individual sense, I would agree that there's free will.
So positing chance, because what you've done is that you've said that actually there could be 5 ways and you can choose amongst them.
Yeah.
But positing chance, or multiple pathways, even infinite pathways, doesn't take away from the fact that whatever pathway you end up on, it wasn't in your control anyway, because it's the chemical processes or the subatomic particle interactions or the quantum field variations, whatever you're going to explain.
But it's the quantity of the pathways.
It could be infinite.
But the quantity will affect it.
So the question isn't that. The question is how are you choosing a path?
But that's what I'm saying. That if the more pathways emerge, the more choice you have.
But are those pathways determined?
Those pathways, they are determined ultimately.
Right.
But prior to that,
So it's irrelevant then how many pathways there are if they're determined.
So the point is, whichever of the infinite number of paths, let's assume there's an infinite number of paths, whichever of those you end up on, the reason that you're there is because of a previous series called series of events.
Yeah.
Okay, over which you have no control.
Yeah.
You don't have no control, Alexia, over these.
Yeah.
So the conclusion that you come up with is not one that you have any control over. The very thoughts you're producing are ones that you don't have any control over. So I would say that as an atheist naturalist, that puts your very rationality at suspect.
Yeah.
I say that you cannot be rational, because why? You have no ability to control your thoughts. Unless you bring a viable, even a philosophical viable mechanism that allows you to have independent thought processes. And that's so consciousness we discussed. For this point, this aspect, how are you thinking?
How I come to conclusions.
Yeah. Because ultimately you said that you use philosophy to answer these big questions, and that presupposes you have rationality.
Yes. That presupposes my rational, my factual.
So the question is, how are you coming to this? How are you thinking? How are you controlling these chain of natural events to come up with a thought that's your own and not nature's?
Not what nature's.
Yeah, even Spinoza's example. If you're going to use it. It's just if ultimately everything is determined, God is nature, whatever that means, you're still in the same conundrum. What is it about you that allows you to have an independent?
But that's what I mean. But because I don't hold the position that God exists, because I don't hold that position, it opens me up to these other positions.
That's the position. I want to know, what's the other position?
The others, like I said, the Spinoza's God, the philosophy. It opens me up to a question mark rather than a full stop. So I would say.
So are you saying that you're not sure about how you have an ability to control your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure, I would say. But that like I said, that wouldn't be a powerful argument for God for me.
No, I'm not. So what I'm building is with your paradigm, what I'm trying to demonstrate is how, for me, as a theist, I have a position that allows me to explain these things, and that you don't. So I'm just contrasting.
Yeah, okay.
So that's what. So consciousness we discussed. We don't know where it comes from. That's your position. For us, we have a conscious being that brings about consciousness in the creation.
Yeah.
For you, naturalists, everything is determined, cause and effect, even your thoughts are that. There's no explanation of how you can rationally control your thought processes. We have an explanation. We're not natural, we're simply natural. We also have an aspect of us which is supernatural, i.e. the soul, etc., whatever we're referring to, which supersedes, which can overcome the natural processes to give us independent thought. So we have an explanation for this. So we call it the soul. Other people may call it other things, but there's that. Then we come to other questions.
Okay.
So now we don't know why you're conscious from your perspective.
Yeah.
We don't know why you think you can think. Now the question is, you're talking about the big things like morality, value, meaning. So let's talk about meaning.
Yeah.
That's probably one of the most meaningful things. Forgive the pun.
Second before you start going to the shop. Call me when you're done, yeah?
Yeah, no worries.
So where do you get meaning from?
I think meaning is, I subscribe to the existentialist view, so I think meaning is created. I think meaning is forged.
Social consensus.
I think we live inherently in a meaningless world, inherently, and I think humans individually, it's humans' duty to create their meaning within that world.
Why do you think that it's a human's duty to
Create meaning.
Yeah. Why do you think that's due?
Because I just, like, when I see the world, I see inherent meaninglessness. You know, I see, if you study history, you see death, you see war, you see evil, you see the negation of meaning. And the only explanation I can have is that within such a world, within a world where there is aberration, where there is all this, we are the prime drivers behind creating meaning. And that there is no one else that we know from that can create meaning.
What is the aberration?
Aberration, evil, war, plagues,
Aberration from what?
just aberration, general, natural, you know, like,
Aberration is like deviation.
yeah.
But what are we deviating from?
Peace. So if we have peace, the aberration would be war.
But why? Because what you've laid is you've laid down some sort of value system for the world as you see it. From a naturalist atheist paradigm, how can you say that war is an aberration? When you look at nature, let's just take the jungle. You know, they say the law of the jungle.
Yeah.
The strongest survives. You see, fluffy bunny rabbits being mauled to death by foxes, whatever that might be. And it is a constant arms race, which is why they say that some crabs evolved big claws, and lobsters had strong, different jaw strengths. But it's a constant warfare and development and evolution.
Yeah.
So none of that seems to be. War doesn't seem to be an aberration. It seems to be part of a natural process.
But
if we're just observing.
Yeah.
So what I'm asking is before we get into the aspect of meaning, because you brought in another aspect of. You said that war is an aberration. Where is that?
Because it inherently fractures society.
But why is that?
And as humans, what we are social animals, and what we like. That's an established. Aristotle said that way back when. But we are social animals. We seek to come together in groups. We seek to form groups. We seek to form societies. And war is the ultimate fracturing of societies.
But what's happening? Because I'm really trying to keep the conversation fundamental.
Yeah.
So that we get to the nuts and bolts before we build up the foundations. So one of the things that you're saying here is that we are social creatures.
Yeah.
The size of the social unit, whatever that might be, 10, 15, 100 million, doesn't, even if there were groups of 10, we would be social creatures fighting other groups of 10 social creatures. So yes, we can be social creatures without negating the need for war, because you would be competing for resources.
Yeah.
You'd be competing for, breeding rights or whatever that might be. So why would then war be an aberration?
Because ultimately, it does lie at the heart of fracturing society. How does a society collapse?
So why is that a problem?
Because we are, like I said, we're social animals. We want to form connections. We want to be, and especially as we go into the 21st century, the need for war, although it still comes up a lot, theoretically is less. Because as we
Are
progress,
those values intrinsically right and wrong, or are they arbitrarily set?
I'd say that they are subjective according to society.
Right. And how do we establish the worth or value of one society's view above the others?
That's it. I don't think it's not about that. It's not about the triumph of one society.
I'm not saying whether it's about it or not. I'm saying if one wanted to say this way of life is better, is superior, it's more correct, it's more worthy, more worthwhile than that group over there, how would we arrive at that situation? Where
then you get something like World War II.
No. I'm saying, so effectively it would have to be war.
It would, yeah.
To the stronger of the two would establish the correct, let's say, or the greater level of correctness.
But that's my point.
In terms of morality, decency, humanity, etc.
But my point is that it shouldn't even happen. That shouldn't come
whether
across.
it should happen is irrelevant. I'm just saying.
The way that it would happen is through war.
What I'm saying is that the values that you may place upon certain things, why should I take those as beneficial or take them seriously or accept them? On what basis?
Because I think they're universal to a degree. Universal to the sense that they're human.
Are there aspects that are not universal?
I mean,
of human interaction?
The idea that we are social animals, yes, that is universal.
No, there might be certain things that might be universal.
Yeah.
But does universality therefore govern? I.e., the greater the social consensus, does that govern something to be more correct than not?
I mean, like I would say, like my idea about meaning, it's a broad idea, and I think it could be interpreted in many ways according to many different cultures. And I think that it's not about the effectiveness of the broadness, but it's about the subjective, what each society takes from it, and what it finds is good in it, and what it finds. Then it's not about that society then imposing itself on the others.
I understand, but the point I'm trying to make to you. So, for example, if the vast majority of the world, say 1,000 years ago, said actually, or say 3,000 years ago, human civilization agreed that the best way to get as many people in the army is to grab as many women and rape as many women as you can to get the biggest army so you can defend yourselves. Right? How would you be able to say that such that type of behavior is actually inherently immoral or wrong, as opposed to being right?
I would say it's immoral because it involves the killing and raping.
But the bulk of the people agree that it's the best way to do it.
But it's immoral in the sense that it stifles human progress.
No, but that's but you're, from your paradigm, vast majority of the people are in agreement to do that.
But I don't think they would be.
No.
I'm saying that each society would take whatever it
Okay,
needs.
so in Nazi Germany,
yeah, that's wrong what they would do.
of course, but you had a society that either willingly or unwillingly, but the majority of them decided that these people over here need to be eradicated.
Minority of people decided.
Well, you say a minority, but certainly the majority of people who had influence or power. Right?
Yeah.
Right? The others, you could argue, perhaps, possibly, some could argue ignorance.
Yeah.
But certainly there were many who knew, right? The point I'm trying to raise to you is that how could you enforce, or how could you argue that your sensibilities, your morality, your decency, your humanity is the correct way, and that their social consensus is in fact wrong?
Like I say, I would make the argument about human preservation.
But they don't accept it.
They don't accept it. Then according to me, they're not living morally.
Sorry?
According to me, they will not be living in line
morally,
human, in a naturalistically moral way. Yeah.
But according to them, they are happy that they're living immorally.
Yeah.
So it becomes like a stalemate.
Yeah.
Agreed?
Yeah.
Agreed? So this is where we believe the religion takes you out of the stalemate. You understand?
Yeah, I see that. Yeah.
So now, regardless of time, regardless of space, you know,
There is one set of
of
right and wrong.
principles and rules and right and wrong, right? But I want to just quickly go back before Imran continues with this discussion. You said to me that my opinion about where rationality and consciousness stems from is a more reasonable position. Agreed?
Yeah, according to the logic that you applied.
And that you applied, because you agreed it was for you as well. Now, the question that I would ask is that, is it not sensible, reasonable, rational, fair to always go with the stronger evidence on something?
But it's not necessarily evidence, what you're saying. It's
Well, when I
more
say
of a frame of...
when I say evidence, we're talking a reasoned argument
Yeah.
can be a form of evidence, right? So, would it not be reasonable to go wherever the evidence takes you, until, of course, you have contradictory evidence that may be stronger to oppose it, right? Because otherwise, would it be fair for me to say, otherwise it becomes an emotional decision, not a rational one? Would you accept that?
Yeah. I would accept that, but I would also say, with the argument that we were having about consciousness, like I said, it's not the balance of proof and the balance of probability. It's not 50-50.
I agree.
And it's not 60-40, it's not 70-30. There are countless, possibilities. All I'm saying is that I don't know. Oh.
But you see, look, by its very nature, the concept of balance of probability is not something we're talking about as precision, as actual statistics necessarily.
Yeah.
62.39%. We're not saying that, right? Balance of probability simply means, of course, in terms of your overall assessment, which argument seems stronger. Of course, sometimes it might be very close, right? Like we had Brexit at 51% and 49%, right? Bad move, I think, but anyway, we won't go into that, right? But otherwise, there can be other arguments that actually seem far more weighty on one side, at 70, possibly 80%, or even going close to certainty than the other.
Yeah.
Now, regardless of where you fall on that statistic, the very fact that one is stronger than the other, I think is reasonable, therefore, to go with that, unless one has evidence to contradict it. You accept that? That's reasonable, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So if we were to apply that principle here, then I would hope that you would at least arrive at a conclusion that it's more reasonable to accept that consciousness arose from something that itself is conscious, is aware.
From a conscious being.
Right? That's a more reasonable position. Now, that being the case, I think that produces a very strong argument, I believe, for a creator. Of course, we can define, the definition can be, the all-powerful, almighty, a conscious being with great power, great strength. However you want to label it, whether you want to say God, Allah, whatever, but nevertheless an entity that's conscious and clearly very powerful, because we see a lot of energy, power around us, right? That's a reasonable position, I believe.
No, I never said it wasn't
should
a reasonable...
we do the Shahada then?
No.
Alexi, come on. Hey? Alexi, you know what I would say to you, brother? We've had these conversations with many people. I do like you because you're a pleasant guy. I like you also for a reason, because there are many people that we talk to here. They will argue till the nth degree without accepting anything, even if it's a reasonable notion. I believe you haven't done that here.
No, because I do agree it's reasonable.
And I believe that you're intelligent enough to know the implications of where the argument is going, yet you still decided to be true to your word, which is that you accepted a notion that was reasonable.
Yeah.
So I'm not just bigging you up here for, people know that we've had these conversations so many times. It's like sometimes talking to a rock.
I know.
Literally.
Yeah.
You've probably done it yourself, right?
Yeah.
What I would say to you, brother, is this. Don't run from the implications because it may make life difficult for you, or it may mean that you have to accept things that possibly are not palatable. Okay? Accept it because it's the stronger argument. Because that's a reasonable stance to take.
Sure.
You know what I mean, brother? Yeah?
I agree.
And even if you find it difficult to adhere to everything that Islam tells you to do, accept it because your heart already accepts that it's probably true.
Oh, okay.
And then work on the other stuff. But don't die in disbelief. Because on the Day of Judgment, we're told the two types of people will have a very hard time. In fact, hellfire. Number one, the one who was given the message, accepted it to be true, knew that this is the truth, and then denied it. Hellfire. The other one is the complacent one, who said, you know what, I'm not even going to look into this because if the implications of finding out means that my life's going to get hard for me. I'd rather be my own Lord, my own God, and just live my life in the way I want to be my own master, basically.
Yeah.
Hellfire. And in Islam, we don't sugarcoat the religion. Yes, there is hell. Yes, there are consequences. But the alternative is an easy one. Swallow your pride. Go wherever the evidence takes you, regardless of the implications of where the evidence takes you. It's better to be a bad Muslim who is not following his religion properly, but still has belief and iman, knowing it's true, than the one who completely rejects it. And even if he spends his entire life, Allah says, in charity and doing good things, Allah says, all of that will come to naught. So this is what we're inviting you to, brother. Honestly.
No.
And I think in your heart, this is the stronger argument.
I agree.
But I believe that there are other reasons why you don't want to take it.
There are other reasons, yeah.
Not rational reasons.
No, rational reasons as well, but there are many reasons.
There are other reasons.
But I do agree that there are strong arguments. I never said,
So what stops you from accepting them?
there are a few things. I think
what?
historical things, historical problems
like?
with Islam.
Like,
The appearance of the hadith
Okay.
200 years after the death of Muhammad.
that's not true, but go on.
No, I mean the first Bukhari.
No, that's not true.
When
So Bukhari is a compilation.
yeah, it's a compilation.
So compilation, what does that mean?
It's a compilation of hadith. It's a lot of different
Compilation from where?
What is a
From
compilation?
from the words of people that knew Prophet Muhammad.
So there's one thing where you're authoring something for the first time with some research, and there's another thing when you're compiling something that's already in existence into one collection.
Yes.
So Bukhari is a compilation
Yeah. From
of pre-existing
Pre-existing.
written works.
That's right.
Because the hadith were written in the life of the Prophet. Many of them, there were companions like Abu Hurairah. He had his own collection of hadith. So we know that this is the case where, because the Prophet, there's even a hadith where the Prophet has advised people not to write the hadith and the Quran on the same piece of paper or whatever they were writing it on, so as not to cause confusion. So we have it's clear information that this was pre-existing written works from the time of the Prophet upon him onwards.
From the 7th century.
Completely.
Also, brother, what's very important here,
Yeah.
what are hadith?
Yeah.
They're the words.
Of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him,
Yeah.
the teachings,
Yeah.
the actions, okay,
His life.
his life.
Yeah.
Now, Islam is not an academic exercise. If the Prophet said, this constitutes a divorce, then the companions operated that principle in their life. This is permissible, this is impermissible. The companions operated that hadith in their life. It's a practicing day to day. You understand my point?
Yeah.
So there is an academic exercise of recording, of writing, of teaching, of learning, but there's a physical manifestation of the hadith in your life from day one. From day one. So the compilation, as Dr. Imran has said, in terms of compiling the hadith, of course, when you write on parchment, skins,
It goes away, yeah.
It goes away, right? However, we have the Quran which was memorized by the companions, and we have hadith, sometimes thousands of them, that were also memorized by those very same companions. Not only do we get the Quran from them, but we get the hadith from them as well. Now, there is a whole science for hadith.
Yes, yeah.
So, for example, if there's a person in Syria in the 2nd century, and he's saying the Prophet, peace be upon him, said, "You're not a true believer until you love for your brother what you love for yourself." Then you have another descendant, 200 years later, same time, region, in Yemen. One you have in Iraq, all teaching the same wording. You understand my point?
Yeah.
It collaborates, it strengthens, even the wording is sometimes almost identical.
It's like a node in a blockchain.
You understand, my brother, yeah?
Yeah.
So, yes, of course, do we have the same level of accuracy with hadith to the Quran? No. Why not? Because the Quran is letter for letter, word for word, pronunciation for pronunciation. But the hadith are incredibly, I would suggest, accurate after the Quran.
Yeah, of course. I mean,
And this is why you'll find the bulk of the Muslims today, the 2 billion Muslims, the differences are minor. The creedal issues, you won't find contention in 95% of the Muslims. Even groups that we don't agree with, like, for example, a group called Ahmadiyya, we don't regard them as even being Muslim.
yeah.
But there's no difference in terms of accepting the Quran itself. You understand my point?
Yeah,
That this is the Quran. You understand? And so, what I would say to you, brother, is that just as you believed and believe in Australia and I believe in Australia, I've got more faith in the Hadith and the Quran than I have of any other notion. But it's because of evidence.
No, I mean, like, when was Bukhari? Was it 870?
No.
Compiled.
No.
About
It's
150 years.
150, 170 years.
So it was the the late 8th century.
Second, third generation. So your grandfather taught his son how to pray. He quoted the hadith. He may have had a compilation written down himself, by the way, right? Your son taught his son, who told Bukhari, and Bukhari wrote it down, that this is how the Prophet prayed.
Okay.
You understand my point?
Generation is 40 years, approximately.
Yeah.
So you're talking about three or four generations.
3 or 4
3 to 4 maximum.
Yeah.
Of course, some people live till 80, 90 years old, right? So it could be that, he lived till 80, his son lived till 75, 80, right? Literally, it could be 2 generations, right? So, but let's be charitable. Now, what would be the concern about hadith in terms of its authenticity? If you had different people saying very different things throughout the globe about what happened, then you could reasonably say, you know what, there's so much discrepancy here, it's actually difficult to decipher what is true and what isn't true.
Yeah.
But when you have so much uniformity, then it poses the question, what's the mechanism of having that unity? And the only, again, balance of probability, the only reasonable possibility, I would say, and mechanism that can be truly, I think, accepted is the one that has to be a fairly robust preservation, because different geographical locations often split up. There's no mass communication.
Yeah.
It takes a horse to ride like a week, 2 weeks to get to the other part of the land. Yet the schools of thought on both of those are so incredibly similar that it actually enforces, I would say, the principle that there's preservation.
Okay.
And this is why, if you look at the works of Angelica Newith on the Quran, she says the notion that somehow preservation didn't occur raises far more questions
Then the opposite.
And again, it's about being reasonable. It's about saying, look, you know what? That seems to be a much more weightier evidence. It seems reasonable and rational for me to go with that, unless, of course, there is contradictory evidence that challenges my view.
Yeah.
And that's all we're asking you to do. Shall we do the Shahada?
But inshallah.
Inshallah one day, huh?
Lovely talking to you, gentlemen. Yes, yes.
It's always a pleasure, Alexi, to talk to you as well.
Yes, you too.
Because you're a nice guy.
Thank you.
See you later. I don't know how you stay warm in that, but you know, yeah.